an educator who comes online, and they teach everything, all the concepts and everything being taught online live to you guys, and you can log in and you can ask your doubts and get all your doubts clarified. And we also have recorded sessions. If you're not if you haven't understood something when it is taught live and online, you can always go back and learn them in the recorded sessions. Then we also offer notes which are based on the recent CBME curriculum. These notes are very good. They're very crisp and concise for your revision. And we also offer MCQs, which are really helpful for your upcoming next examination. And the best of all is the personalized counseling guidance we offer. Here you will be given a mentor. That mentor will be like your buddy, they'll be like your friend. They will analyze your strengths, your weaknesses, where you whether you lack concepts, or you lack just the confidence to face the exam. So basically what they do is they analyze everything, and they give you a study plan, and you can share anything and everything with them. They can be just like your friends. You can share all your concerns with them, and they'll hold your hands to make sure that you pass your exams with flying colors. And we have three different subscription models: basic, standard, and the premium. Basic, you get pre-recorded sessions, live, and quick revision exam modules. In the standard plan, you get pre-recorded classes, live doubt clarification, and quick revision exam modules. And the premium is best of all. It's all in one, which is pre-recorded classes, live class, live doubt clarification session, one-on-one guidance, and a quick revision exam module. So all of this are included in the premium plan. You can use my coupon code Dr. Sushma 20 for additional discounts across all three plans. All right. Yes. So this is the tentative schedule that we have. In today's, we'll be discussing about development week 3 to 8. So development 3 to 8 is very, very important. It is actually the embryonic period. So what has happened? So in the previous class, what did we learn? End of the previous class, we stopped at the end of 3 weeks, isn't it? So what was there towards the end of the class? We actually had the formation of ectoderm, and there was a notochord present, and there was mesoderm, and there was endoderm. So this is what we had learned in the previous class, isn't it? And we also learned that there is a lateral plate mesoderm that is spreading everywhere, and except for two membranes where lateral plate mesoderm does not exist, and that is the buccal oropharyngeal membrane and the cloacal membrane. And then we had a primitive streak that developed, and after the primitive streak we had the notochord and then the oropharyngeal membrane. Is it not? All of these things we've already covered. In this class we will study what are the derivatives of all these layers. So what do we have? We have the ectoderm here, and we have the mesoderm here, and we have the endoderm here, and this is the notochord. So we are basically playing around these structures to see what do they give rise to eventually. So that is the crux of today's class. All right, let's just take a clinical case scenario first. A newborn is diagnosed with a condition characterized by incomplete closure of the neural tube. So just now we spoke about notochord, and neural tube seems something related to the notochord, right? Is it not? I mean, do they not sound somewhere they're related? They're indeed related. We'll see how. Resulting in the protrusion of spinal cord and meninges. Which of the following conditions is it most likely? So this is the question. Let's look at the option. One is hydrocephalus. Is it hydrocephalus, guys? Hydrocephalus, not likely, because there's no protrusion of spinal cord and meninges in hydrocephalus. Spina bifida, okay, question mark. Meningomyelocele, question mark. Encephalocele, question mark. So I have ruled out hydrocephalus for sure because there is no protrusion of spinal cord and meninges. Now I have to rule out between these three options, which we'll come back and learn once we finish neural tube formation and neural tube defects. All right. Yes, let's begin today's class. So basically, we are now in the embryonic period, which is between 3rd to 8th week. This is the period of organogenesis, right? This is the time the organogenesis actually happens. So let's say, for example, if I have any insult to the development of the embryo, then it is going to hamper the organogenesis, and I'm going to have a lot of congenital malformations. Okay, embryonic period is the time where each of the three germ layers, ecto, meso, and endo, gave rise to number of specific tissues and organs. This differentiation is very, very important for us. Now, what is the duration? Duration is between 3 to 8 weeks. By the end of embryonic period, the main organ systems are well established. From here, the growth of the embryo actually takes place in a certain direction to make it to a fully functioning human being. All right. And of course, the major features of the external body are also recognizable by the end of second month. All right. So look at this diagram. Look at this diagram, guys. Now we are at what week? We are at the end of third week, meaning we are at somewhere here, right? 21 to 23 days. Now we are starting this. Now we are starting the development somewhere at this stage, and we will see how different development has taken place and finally gives rise to a fully functioning human being. All right. Now, derivatives of the ectodermal germ layer. So as I told you, we have ectoderm and a notochord, mesoderm and endoderm. Now I am talking about this particular layer, that is ectoderm. Mainly, guys, ectodermal structures are those which are in now into neural ectoderm and non-neural ectoderm, right? It is divided into neural ectoderm and non-neural ectoderm. The neural ectoderm, let me just erase it. I don't know why it is happening. The neural ectoderm mainly gives rise to central nervous system structures. Needless to say, name only says neural ectoderm, which gives rise to central nervous system, peripheral nervous system, and neural crest cells. So basically, from this ectodermal structure, I have two things coming out. One is neural ectoderm and other is non-neural ectoderm. Two structures come out of this, and whatever that is in contact with the outside world is non-neural. Neural ectoderm gives rise to CNS, PNS, and neural crest cell. So the non-neural ectoderm gives rise to sensory epithelium of nose, ear, epidermis, including hair and nails, subcutaneous glands, mammary glands, pituitary gland, enamel of teeth. Out of all this, the one structure that you have to remember is the pituitary gland, because it is not exactly in contact with the outside world. Rest everything else, just look at your face, look at your hands and write. That's it. Those are the derivatives of the non-neural ectoderm. Now, if I have to talk about the neural ectoderm, what exactly happens? How do the nervous system develop? Okay. Now, towards the beginning of the third week, the ectodermal germ layer has the shape of the disc that is broader in the cephalic end than the caudal region. Why is it broader in the cephalic area, guys? Because the primitive streak, when it is formed, it is going towards the cranial area, that is a cephalic area, and the differentiation also begins faster in the cranial area and it is much slower in the caudal area, is it not? So appearance of the notochord, what happens is when the notochord is formed, it irritates the ectoderm which is present above. So what was the structure? I had these three derivatives, right? This is ectoderm, mesoderm, endoderm, and between ectoderm and mesoderm, I have the notochord. The notochord that is present between ectoderm and mesoderm, it irritates the overlying ectoderm, right? And the tissue that is there, the ectodermal tissue that is there, they thicken and they form something called as neural plate. What has happened? The notochord which is present, it irritates the overlying ectoderm, and the tissues that are present in the ectoderm thickens and they form neural plates. Neural plates. Okay. Now, further, once the neural plate is formed, from here till the process of formation of the nervous system is what is called as neurulation. Sorry, not nervous system, neural tube formation, not nervous system. Correction, guys. So neurulation is the process where the neural plate forms the neural tube. So what was there? I had a notochord here and there was an overlying ectoderm was present. Now this notochord is irritating the ectoderm. As a result of the irritation, it has formed thickenings over here, which are called as neural plate. Neural plate gives rise to neural tube. And this is called as neurulation. From notochord to neural plate to neural tube is what is called as neurulation. All right. Now, by the end of the third week, the lateral edges of the neural plate becomes elevated to form the neural folds, and then the depressed mid region forms the neural groove. For example, if I have to show you, like for this is, let's say, is the notochord, which is present like this. Okay, this is the ectoderm and this is the notochord. The notochord that is present over here is irritating the ectoderm. Let's say it is irritating the ectoderm like this. That is why I have two thickenings that are formed. Once these thickenings that are formed, they starts to go like this. Can you see? Once the thickenings that are formed, they starts to form a groove like this, which is called as neural groove. And the two folds that are formed on either side is called as neural folds. Once the neural folds are formed, these neural folds start to approach each other in the midline and they fuse. And as they fuse, the fusion is always from cranial to caudal, and the tube-like structure that is formed is what is called as the neural tube. Understanding is, it's very easy and very conceptual. Suppose if this is the neural tube, notochord that is present, this black pen is the notochord. Okay, it is present below the ectoderm. Now it is irritating the ectoderm. Okay, it is, let's say that it is stimulating, irritating, whatever. Once it stimulates the ectoderm, ectoderm forms thickenings called as neural plate. And finally, the neural plate structures, they go and they form a groove-like structure. Can you see the groove here? That is called as neural groove. And it forms two folds called as neural folds. These neural folds come closer to each other in the midline and they fuse. And this fusion starts cranially. And of course, it ends at the caudal structure. And this process is what is called as neurulation. Look at the diagram. You can see clearly this is the ectoderm. Correct? This is the notochord, and you can see how two irritating structures, the thickenings in the ectoderm. What are these? These are neural. What are these? These are neural plates, and which have given rise to neural crest cells, right? Then they form two folds called as neural folds, and they go deeper and deeper to form the neural groove, and finally they approach each other towards the midline and form this tubular structure, which is called as neural tube. Now, what is the order of cells that are present? So you have neural crest, then you have the neural tube. Underneath that, you have the notochord. This order is important. What do we have? We have the neural crest here. This is the neural tube. This is the notochord. Where is all of this happening? Between ectoderm and mesoderm. So this is the mesoderm. This is the surface ectoderm. Understood? This process is called as neurulation. As you can see here, it's a beautiful picture showing. This is the, this is the neuroectoderm, and the neural folds have formed. Neural plate has formed, and this is the neural grooves have been formed, and finally neural tube is formed. Okay, this is again a beautiful picture, shows the folding of the neural folds which approach each other in the midline, and it forms the neural tube. All right. Yes. Next, we have something called as neuropores, guys. Again, it's very easy. Until the fusion is complete. Let's say the fusion is not complete. Let's say we are at this stage. Now the fusion is not complete to form this neural tube. Now the fusion is not yet complete. There is a cephalic and there is a caudal end. Now the cephalic end and the caudal end communicate with the amniotic cavity by the way of anterior and posterior neuropores respectively. That's it. Once it fuses, of course, everything gets sealed. But before it fuses, it communicates with the amniotic cavity through the anterior and posterior neural pores respectively. Okay. Now the cranial neural pore occurs at around 25th day. Caudal closes at around 28th day. Why caudal closes? Because caudally all the development is slower than as compared to cranial. Just another diagram showing, guys. Neural groove is formed, neural fold is formed, neural crest cells are formed, and finally neural tube is formed. And here is the notochord. So what is the order in which it is present? Neural crest cells, then the neural tube, and then the notochord. This is the order at which it is present. Then the neurulation is complete, and from here the central nervous system is represented by a closed tubular structure with a narrow caudal portion, the spinal cord, and much broader cephalic portion, number of dilations, the brain vesicles. Again, is it making sense, guys? What is it here? We have a narrow caudal portion. The caudal portion in the development is always narrow, isn't it? And we have a broader cephalic portion. That is why the brain is bigger than your spinal cord. Spinal cord is small, but brain is bigger and wider. Why does it happen? Because during the embryonic development itself, the caudal portion is narrow. Okay, whereas the cephalic end of this development of the nervous system as it is happening is wider. All right. Yes. Then let's just take a quick MCQ. During neurulation, the neural plate forms which of the following structure? Neural plate folds form which of the following structure? The folds, they come together and they form neural tube. Okay. Neural tube. Neural tube development, as we saw, caudally is smaller, cranially is wider. So that is why we have a bigger brain and we have a small spinal cord, a thin spinal cord. Then we have something called as neural crest cells. As the neural folds elevate and fold, cells at the lateral border of the crest of the neuroectoderm begin to dissociate from their neighbors. Okay. Now this population, which is called as the neural crest cells, which are often called as the fourth embryonic layer there, because they have so many structures coming from the neural crest cells, and they'll undergo epithelial to mesenchymal transition. Pay attention to this word, guys. Mesenchymal transition. What does it mean? Epithelial to mesenchymal. It does not mean that the neural crest cells are transforming themselves into mesoderm, right? The neural crest cells are not transforming themselves into mesoderm. Rather, they are forming structures which are mesenchymal in origin. What is mesenchymal in origin, guys? All of the skeletal muscles and bones and tendons. So these are all the mesenchymal structures. Mesenchyme is not the same as mesoderm. Mesoderm is a very broad term, right? Mesenchyme is, of course, one of the derivatives of mesoderm, but it is not the same as mesenchyme. Okay, the neural crest cells, they undergo a transmission, a transition from epithelial to mesenchymal structures. Suppose if the neural crest hadn't undergone this transition, they would have probably formed epithelial structures. But now, because it has undergone this transition, they form mesenchymal structures, and it leaves the neuroectoderm by active migration and displacement into the underlying mesoderm. Now, neural crest cells which were there in the epidermal area has now reached they leave the structures and they reach the underlying mesoderm. Okay, look at the neural crest derivatives, guys. Look at the neural crest derivatives. I told you it underwent a transition from epithelial structure to mesenchymal structure, right? Epithelial to mesenchymal structure, and they got detached from the the upper layer, and it has now come to the mesodermal layer. From the ectodermal layer, it has come to the mesodermal layer. Now look at all the different structures, connective tissues and bones of face and skull, cranial nerve ganglia, C cells of thyroid, conotruncal septum in the heart, odontoblasts, dermis in the face and neck, spiral ganglia, sympathetic chain, parasympathetic ganglia of the gastrointestinal tract, adrenal medulla, Schwann cells, glial cells, meninges. Look, everything, all of these are connective tissue structures, right? Melanocytes, smooth muscle cells to blood vessels of the face and forebrain. Okay, because of this transition, it is forming all structures like bones and connective tissue, and you have dermis in the face and neck. It's not from epidermal to mesenchymal, right? Epidermis and dermis. So dermis is from the mesenchyme, isn't it? It is not the same as mesoderm. Remember, mesenchyme is not the same as mesoderm. Mesoderm is a very broad term. Okay. Next, neural crest cells migrate to form various structure. Which of the following is not derived from the neural crest cells? Adrenal medulla? Yes, it is derived. Facial bones? Yes, it is derived. Did we see spinal cord here? Just go back. Did we see spinal cord in the list? Did we? No. What did we see? Spinal dorsal root ganglia. Right? Dorsal root ganglia is a sensory ganglia. Dorsal column pathway. Dorsal column is, what are all the different, dorsal column pathway? What are the different? What are the different sensations carried by the dorsal column pathway? Proprioception, vibration. I hope you remember all this. Just because we are in embryology doesn't mean that we are forgetting whatever we had learnt in neuroanatomy. All right. So spinal cord is not formed by the neural crest cells, but sensory ganglia, yes. Applied anatomy, we are learning about the neural tube defects. So what are these neural tube defects? So I told you that the neural folds close together. In the tube, you have the development of entire CNS and PNS, isn't it? If the neural tube closure fails to occur, what happens? The contents which are present inside comes out, isn't it? As it closes, it forms the cranial region, correct? And if the neural tube fails to close in the cranial region, as the neural, see, if suppose these were the neural folds, they came closer together and they closed like this. Now we have a cranial region which is broad and we have a caudal region, right? Now in the cranial region, if it fails, what happens? The brain and the whatever the neural tissue that is there over here comes out, and that is called as anencephaly. That is called as anencephaly. Anencephaly is a lethal defect where the skull bones and the cavity is not formed at all. As you can see here, you can see how the rest of the face is normal, guys. Look at the face and eyes and ear, everything is formed normally, but the cranial cavity is not formed. And of course, brain will not be formed. If the same, if let's say the neural folds are like this and they join together in the midline, okay, and then if when they join, the caudal join, the joining of them in the caudal region, if it has not taken place properly, then what happens? Anywhere from the cervical region caudally, then it causes spina bifida. If it happens in the cranial region, it causes anencephaly. If it happens in the caudal region, it causes spina bifida. So the most common site of spina bifida is in the lumbosacral region, suggesting the closure process in this area may be more susceptible for this change. Okay. Now, if you want to go back to the question that we did initially, clinical case scenario, incomplete closure of neural tube resulting in protrusion of spinal cord and meninges. What is this? Obviously, spina bifida, right? Spina bifida. So this is what happens if the tissue does not, if suppose, how does spina bifida happen is, look at this. As the neural tube is formed, look at the line of closure here. If it does not close, so obviously, let's say this is the cranial end, this is the caudal end. If it does not close properly in this area, caudal area, it causes spina bifida. Whereas if it does not close in the cranial end, it causes anencephaly. That's all the concept, and that's all you need to know over here. Now let's look at what are the derivatives of the mesodermal germ layer. Until now, we were only talking about ectodermal area, where how the the different folds, neural tube, and everything is formed. Now let's talk about the mesodermal area. Approximately 17th day, the mesoderm is derived into paraaxial mesoderm, lateral plate mesoderm, and intermediate mesoderm. Suppose if this is the neural tube, ectoderm, this is the endoderm, and if this is the neural tube, this is the midline, of course. Now, the mesodermal area, which is closer to the midline, is the paraaxial mesoderm. Okay, that is the paraaxial. Next, more laterally, you have the lateral most is lateral plate mesoderm. Between them, what we have is the intermediate. If this is the mesodermal area, this is the ectoderm, this is the endoderm, middle you have the mesoderm. The one that is close to the midline becomes the paraaxial, closer to the axis. Between the lateral plate and the paraaxial is intermediate, and this is of course the lateral most is lateral plate mesoderm. Further, the lateral plate mesoderm divides into two layers, the somatic or the parietal mesoderm, splanchnic or visceral. Parietal meaning it's something which is more anterior, right, which is more superficial. So it is continuous with mesoderm covering the amnion, whereas splanchnic is continuous with the mesoderm covering the yolk sac. Okay, yes, look at this, guys, look at this. So suppose if this is the midline, this is the midline, sorry, just a second, I don't know, I'm very bad when it comes to writing the diagrams and making all these things. Just let's adjust. So this is the midline. The one that is closer to that will be this will be the axial. This is the lateral. Between them, we have the intermediate. Okay. Now the lateral most divides into two. Splanchnic. Splanchnic is more inside and parietal. All right. Yes. You can clearly see in this diagram as well. This is paraaxial mesoderm, intermediate mesoderm, lateral plate mesoderm. And further it is divided into somatic layer and splanchnopluric layer. Now let's talk about the paraaxial mesoderm. So the paraaxial mesoderm begins to organize in segments. So this was the midline notochord and here is the paraaxial. So I'm talking about this structure now, this particular structure now. As the beginning of the third week, it starts to organize itself into segments. And these segments are called as somatomeres. Somatomeres, they first appear in the cephalic region of the embryo and processes cephalocaudal. No points in guessing because everything that happens always begins in the cephalic region. Cephalic region, the process begins and finally it reaches caudally. That is how even the neural tube closure took place, if you remember. Now, each somatomere consists of mesodermal cells, isn't it? It's happening in the mesoderm. So, obviously, mesodermal cells arranged in concentric whorls around the center of the unit. In the head region, they contribute to mesenchyme in the head. Occipital region, that is more caudally, they further organize into somites, right? Now, the first pair of somites that arise in the occipital region of the embryo approximately on the 20th day of development. This is very, very important. From here, it appears in the craniocaudal direction. See, guys, as you can see, in this diagram, you can beautifully see, just get an orientation. Okay, I was drawing a diagram like this. Okay, now what was this? This is where the notochord was present, and this is the ectoderm. In the ectoderm, what was there? We had a primitive streak like this. Sorry, this is not where the primitive streak. One second. So we had a notochord that was developed. Okay, then we had a let's say suppose it's the notochord, and here is the primitive streak, and then cranial and caudal ends and all of this was present in this area, isn't it? What is happening? Just a second, guys. I'll draw it again. Okay, so now basically I have an ectoderm, mesoderm and endoderm. So in the mesoderm, we had the formation of the neural tube like this, and we also had primitive streak, and here is the buccopharyngeal membrane and cloacal membrane and everything. Suppose if I remove this ectoderm, if I strip this ectoderm and see from below, if I'm seeing from this direction, I have removed the ectoderm. This is what it looks like. You can see this is the primitive streak and this is the notochord, and you can see this. The one that is closer to the midline is the lateral plate mesoderm, which has organized itself into these segments. Up until now, we were looking at a diagram, which was if this particular diagram, if I rotate it into 180 degrees like this, then I will have something like this diagram where I can see there's a primitive streak here, there's a notochord here, and here is all the lateral plate mesoderm because closer to the midline. And here you have intermediate and here you have lateral. So I've just turned it over. This diagram, I have turned it over like this, and this is how it looks like. So in the midline, you have the notochord, and the axial mesoderm has arranged itself into, these are the somites. These are the somites. There are about 42 to 44 pairs of somite which are present. Okay. Out of which the first occipital, the last 5 to 7 coccygeal somites, they later disappear. While the remaining, they form the axial skeleton. They form the axial skeleton. Okay? Yes. Then, somite differentiation. How from this round beaded structure, how it forms axial skeleton. Now, where is the somites are getting formed? It is getting formed in the mesoderm. Okay, then they undergo a process of epithelialization and arrange themselves in a donut shape around a small lumen. Beginning of the 4th week, each somite forms a sclerotome. Okay, what is the sclerotome? Which differentiates into vertebrae and ribs. Myotome, obviously name only suggests that it has got something to do with muscles, which differentiates into muscles of the back, intercostal muscles, and some of the limb muscles, right? Dermatome, something related to skin, differentiate into dermis of the skin and back. So until now, what are the different structures that were formed? We studied from the neural crest cells derivatives, isn't it? Neural crest cells derivative give rise to so many structures that we studied. Now the somites are giving rise to all of these structures like dermis of the skin in the back, intercostal muscles, muscles at the back. Isn't it? Are you able to imagine how different structures are getting formed? Right? Now the cells of the myotome become mesenchymal again and they migrate beneath the dermata to create the dermatomyotome. Okay. Now cells in the dermomyotome ultimately form debris from the skin of the back and muscles of the ultimately it forms the dermis of the skin of the back and muscles of the back and the body wall and some limb muscles as well. Okay. Then, so this is how you can see, this is the neural tube. Below the neural tube, what did we have? Notochord, isn't it? Isn't it? So what was the, let's say, the order in which it was present? Neural crest cells. Then we had the neural tube, and then we have the notochord. Right? Now, closer to the midline. So if this is the neural tube and this is the midline, closer to that is the what mesoderm is this? Axial, paraaxial mesoderm, which has formed a somite like this. Okay, these are different sections at which it is seen. Obviously, there is a lateral plate mesoderm, and between them we have the intermediate. Now, what are the structures that come from the intermediate mesoderm? Intermediate differentiates into urogenital structures, kidneys, the gonads, and the genital ducts. So that is why, guys, whenever there is any problem with the kidneys, right? Let's say you have polycystic kidney, or there is any problem with the gonads or any genital ducts. Let's say Mullerian agenesis is one. You always have to look for any abnormalities in the kidneys as well, because they come from the same parent structure, that is intermediate mesoderm. In case of, let's say, Mullerian agenesis, okay, just an example where the Mullerian ducts are not formed, they have skeletal muscle abnormality. More than that, you have to look for any kidney abnormality in them. Okay, problem with urogenital structures, the developmental anomalies of the urogenital structure will always have some implication with the development of kidneys as well. So this is a learning lesson for you guys. Whenever there's a problem with any of this, let's say Mullerian agenesis, MRKH syndrome, and all of these developmental deviations that we have, you always should look for some abnormality in the kidney as well. Now let's look at the lateral plate mesoderm. So lateral plate is what? Until now we studied about the somites in the paraaxial, and we saw it formed so many structure muscles of the back, intercostal muscles, dermis, and everything. Then from the intermediate we have kidneys and the urogenital system. Now we are looking at the lateral plate mesoderm and what are the different structures that are formed by lateral plate mesoderm. Okay. Now the lateral plate splits into parietal and visceral. Parietal is the somatic, visceral is the splanchnic layers by the formation of intraembryonic Coelom. Extra embryonic coelom, when was it formed, guys? When was the extra embryonic coelom formed? It was in the second week of development. If you remember, we had the formation of what is this? Amniotic cavity, and this was the yolk sac, and we had the formation of extra embryonic mesoderm like this, which went and went and went, took a chunk out of the primary yolk sac, and we had the formation of a smaller secondary yolk sac like this, isn't it? So this is the extra embryonic coelom, and the one that is happening inside this yolk sac is the intraembryonic coelom. I hope you're able to correlate. Embryology is all about seeing what had happened in the past and what's happening now. Okay, the parietal layer, it forms the dermis of the skin of the body as well as limbs, bone and connective tissue, and the sternum. Okay, in addition to that, certain muscle precursor cells from the paraaxial mesoderm migrate into the parietal layer of the LPM, and they form the costal cartilage, limb muscles, most of the body wall muscles. Okay, somites formed intercostal muscles and everything. Now look at what LPS is forming. LPM is forming lateral plate mesoderm is forming costal cartilages, limb muscles, and most of the body wall muscles. Like for example, internal and external oblique and transversus abdominis muscles. Right? Next, it also forms mesothelial membranes, it also forms mesothelial membranes which line in the peritoneal, pleural, and pericardial cavities. Okay. Next, the visceral layer of the lateral plate mesoderm together with the endoderms forms the wall of the gut tube, forms a thin serous membrane around the organ. Okay. Next, just to summarize, what are the different structures that got derived from the mesoderm? So mesoderm, we had three different layers, right? Paraaxial, intermediate, lateral plate, correct? Paraaxial formed somites, intermediate kidney and urogenital, along with lateral plate mesoderm, along with endodermal layer, it resulted in the formation of so many muscles, right? So limb muscles and the gut and everything. So let's summarize all of this in one place. So basically, mesoderm forms the connective tissue, cartilage, and bone, striated and smooth muscles, blood and lymph cells, walls of the heart, blood and lymph vessels, kidneys, gonads, and their corresponding ducts, cortical portion of the adrenal gland and spleen. Adrenal medulla was coming from, if you remember, adrenal medulla was coming from neural crest cells. Very good, guys. So cortical adrenal cortex comes from mesoderm. Adrenal medulla comes from the neural crest cells. That is from the ectoderm actually. Okay, then just a picture on how the vasculogenesis actually takes place. So these are all the derivatives of the mesoderm. Whereas what were the derivatives of the ectoderm? Mainly the nervous system. Okay, CNS, PNS, and all of these were derived from the ectoderm. Correct? And then what else? We also saw neural crest cells derivatives. And then now we are seeing mesodermal germ layer and endoderm, of course. Endoderm, it forms what does it form? Together with LPS, it forms the wall of the gut tube. Did you get an idea as to how it happens? Basically, ectoderm is everything that is in contact with the environment. All right. And also it forms CNS, PNS, and all of those structures which were derived from neural crest cells. Then in the mesoderm, we have three derivatives of mesoderm. One is paraaxial mesoderm, which forms somites, and there are so many structures which are formed by somites, like muscles of the back, dermis of the back, and then intercostal muscles and all of that. From the intermediate, I have gonads and kidney, and from the lateral plate mesoderm, I have different muscles like limb muscles which are formed, the skeleton basically. Now the limb skeleton and dermis of the limb and all of this. So together, all three gives rise to these. All these are derived from the mesoderm. Let's just take a small MCQ. Which of the following statements about derivatives of the mesodermal germ layer is true? They include such as muscles and bones. Is it true or not? Yes, it is true. Indeed true, right? Just now we saw. Primarily gives rise to nervous system. No. Absolutely not. Nervous system is coming from ectoderm. Remember the notochord present in the mesoderm, it irritates the overlying ectoderm and it forms the neural groove and neural folds. They join together to form the neural tube, and the joining of the neural tube starts from cranial to caudal, and if the cranial end is not fused properly, it causes anencephaly. The caudal end is not fused, it causes spina bifida. Getting all of these, we also had neural crest cells. So definitely nervous system, no, it comes from the ectoderm. Next, they contribute mainly to skin and its derivatives. Absolutely not. Ectoderm is the one that is contributing to formation of anything that is in contact with the exterior environment. They're responsible for forming the lining of the digestive tract? No. Lining of the digestive tract comes with lateral plate mesoderm plus endoderm. Understood, guys? So that is it about today's class. Today's class, we saw how the layers, the three layers that I had, ecto, meso, and endo, how they gave rise to different structures. I hope you found today's class useful, and I hope you're enjoying this series. And I wish you guys all the very best. If you have any doubt, you can follow us across the social media handles. Keep studying, keep reading, guys. Embryology, learning embryo is a lot of fun, and I hope you are enjoying studying embryology. Okay, please do follow us across all the social media handles, and I'll see you in the next class. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you.